that steep duties are essential to protect United States industries, reduce the trade deficit, and revive domestic manufacturing. Within days of his inauguration, he declared a national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, claiming that foreign trade and economic practices have created a national emergency threatening American sovereignty and jobs. Throughout, Trump has framed these measures as patriotic imperatives. "We don't need anything from Canada," he declared on Truth Social, underscoring his belief that American consumers and businesses could turn domestically or to alternative partners without missing a beat. In his April executive order unveiling the broader America First trade doctrine, he directed cabinet officials to use every tool at their disposal to hold foreign partners accountable for unfair practices and to ensure that United States tax and trade policies prioritize American interests in international trade. Although Trump's tariffs were designed to encourage companies to bring manufacturing back to the United States, they've had the opposite effect. According to yesterday's reports, Canadian firms are now considering shifting some of their production and investment out of the United States altogether, both to sidestep the tariffs and to gain complete independence. Without further ado, here are the details. Premiers from Canada's provinces and territories convened in Huntsville to launch the three-day Council of the Federation Summit. Against a backdrop of Pine Lake and summer sunshine, Saskatchewan's Scott Moe, Ontario's Doug Ford, and Quebec's François Legault each addressed the National Press Gallery, laying out their province's top priorities as the federal government prepares to renegotiate key trade arrangements with the United States by August 1st. Premier Scott Moe opened the session by confronting the Prime Minister's recent suggestion that, any future deal looks like it will involve some form of tariff. Scott Moe responded, "Yeah, I think that's the reality of the situation. We have tariff and non-tariff barriers between our provinces. We have tariff and non-tariff barriers in USMCA, NAFTA prior to that, or any global agreement. We won't get to zero on each and every topic. The goal is to get as close to zero on as many items as we possibly can, and I know that's the Prime Minister's goal as well." Turning to China's retaliatory measures, Moe emphasized the pivotal role of agriculture in Saskatchewan's economy. He stated, "Agriculture is at the center of those discussions right now. We export to over 160 countries around the globe, and it takes sustained effort even when things are good. Our ministers are meeting their counterparts in China, and we'd hope President Xi will have another meeting soon. There's great concern for us. Too often those retaliatory measures land on Saskatchewan's farmers." When pressed on what Saskatchewan hopes to achieve with the United States, Moe demurred that might be a good question for Wednesday, after further discussions with the Prime Minister. However, he did outline his vision, saying, "What I'd hope for is as free and fair a trade environment as possible, not only with the US but also with Mexico. It's beneficial for Canada and for North America. The steps taken so far are positive and will move us toward that free and fair environment. We need to pay attention. Others around the world are watching our trade environment and not always with our best interests in mind." Ontario Premier Doug Ford echoed Moe's acceptance of potential tariffs, but he really framed Ontario's aggressive response. "We may differ on a few views, which is fine, but we'll walk out of here united as a strong, sovereign country." Last week's steel measures give the sector time to restructure. If by August 1st there's no peace, those sectoral tariffs should go. Then we'll onshore everything. "We don't make I-beams here in Ontario, but we have more cranes than the top 10 US cities combined lifting those I-beams. We're bringing companies on board so they don't face a 25% tariff coming and going. We'll encourage all provinces to buy Canadian-made vehicles and products. We trade more with the US than Japan, China, Korea, the UK, and France combined. We are an economic powerhouse, and we don't have to take a backseat to anyone." Shifting to Indigenous relations, Ford underscored Ontario's historic treaty settlement. Ontario was the first province to settle a $10 billion treaty rights deal. That says it all. There's $3 billion in equity, $70 million for training, and $10 million in scholarships available for First Nations communities. Tomorrow we'll spend over 3 hours meeting with them. The door is open, and we welcome Indigenous communities to partner with us to prosper like never before. Quebec Premier François Legault stressed Quebec's non-negotiable stance on supply management. There's no question about protecting dairy and other supply-managed products. We must also safeguard our cultural exemption, French on labels and everything that makes Quebec unique. Legault pressed for firm timelines. Right now, the whole Canadian economy suffers from uncertainty. Companies aren't investing. If there's an agreement on August 1st, we need a clear duration. 3 years? 5 years? Investors must know what to expect 6 months and 12 months down the road. Turning to defense spending, he made a local pitch. Quebec has bombardier and shipyards ready to create 10,000 to 30,000 jobs. Federal dollars must be spent here in Canada, not in the United States or anywhere else. This is how we turn defense investment into real jobs for Canadians. Asked if some tariffs are now unavoidable, Legault replied cautiously, "It's too soon to answer. Ideally there are no tariffs, but if there are, we need assurances they'll hold for the agreed duration. Companies need that certainty." China, Europe, Mexico, and expressed hope that Ambassador Carney will secure a durable long-term deal. To gauge how tariffs and any Canadian countermeasures impact the U.S. economy, we need to understand the trade dynamics between the United States and its top trade partners. In 2024, the United States maintained deeply intertwined trade relationships with its closest partners, running deficits with most but enjoying a surplus with the United Kingdom. Exports to the European Union topped $666.7 billion, while imports reached $815.2 billion, leaving a €148.4 billion shortfall. Trade with Canada was similarly lopsided. U.S. shipments of goods and services totaled $440.7 billion, compared with $476.7 billion in Canadian exports to the U.S., producing a $36 billion deficit. Mexico remained the largest source of U.S. trade deficits, with exports of $384.9 billion dwarfed by $560.7 billion dollars in imports, resulting in a $175.9 billion gap. With China, the imbalance widened even further. U.S. exports of $199.3 billion were met by $461.4 billion in Chinese imports, driving a $262.2 billion deficit. The only bright spot was the United Kingdom, where U.S. exports of $179.5 billion exceeded imports of $162.2 billion, yielding a $17.3 billion surplus. Overall, these figures underscore North America's and Europe's critical roles in U.S. trade, and the significant challenge of narrowing large and persistent deficits with key commercial partners. While Trump's tariffs are intended to shield American manufacturers, several adverse effects have already begun to emerge. Many American companies rely on imported raw materials and intermediate goods to produce finished products. Tariffs raise the cost of key inputs, steel and aluminum being the most prominent examples, forcing manufacturers to either absorb higher expenses or pass them on to consumers. In industries with slim margins, elevated material costs risk squeezing profitability, delaying investments, or even prompting layoffs. As firms cope with steeper import duties, prices for consumer goods have begun to climb. From appliances and automobiles to electronics, higher production costs translate into more expensive retail prices. For households already contending with rising energy and housing costs, additional inflation can dampen spending power and slow overall economic growth. Trading partners affected by U.S. tariffs have signaled or implemented countermeasures, Canada's agricultural sector and China's manufacturing exports being among the most vocal. Retaliatory duties on U.S. farm products, for example, have depressed commodity prices and created uncertainty for American farmers, undermining rural incomes and investment in planting seasons. Companies with integrated supply chains across North America and beyond now face logistical headaches as they scramble to reroute shipments around tariffed goods. Uncertainty over which products might face new duties makes long-term planning difficult. Many firms are delaying capital expenditures or seeking offshore alternatives, potentially hollowing out U.S. production capacity over time. Although higher tariffs are meant to strengthen U.S. bargaining power, over-reliance on broad-based duties may narrow its room for diplomatic compromise. Domestic industries ask for carve-outs and exemptions, while foreign governments retaliate selectively, leaving U.S. negotiators to juggle competing lobbying pressures without delivering significant new market access. In the near term, consumers can expect modestly higher prices on a range of goods, while manufacturers will continue to weigh higher input costs against relocation or restructuring decisions. Unless tariffs are calibrated tightly, targeting specifically identified unfair practices rather than broad sectors, the risk remains that American firms and workers, rather than foreign competitors, will shoulder the bulk of these added costs. Over time, this dynamic could erode the very domestic manufacturing base that the policy aims to protect, while doing little to narrow persistent trade deficits. A more nuanced approach, combining targeted relief for truly strategic industries with multilateral engagement, may better align long-term U.S. interests with global market realities. Thank you for watching. As an independent channel, we don't have corporate backing. We rely on your support to keep going. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps more people find our work. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Check out the next video on your screen. We picked it just for you.